We end up getting The Amazing Spider-Man a bunch of times each month. We're back again, and people can't wait for Rek-Rap. You're going to get him again. But it looks like this might be the last of Rek-Rap. It's Amazing Spider-Man number 38. I say the last of them, and I just mean for now, because as long as Zeb Wells is writing Spider-Man, yeah, there's always going to be that fear. First off, the fear of Zeb Wells continuing writing Spider-Man, but also the fear of Rek-Rap coming back at Eddie.
I think if you ever see Ed McGuinness on art, that pretty much means he's coming back.
Like ahead of time, you hear Ed McGuinness is like, I'm going to be Rek-Rap. We're going to go through this, obviously, but when we do, at the end, we might end up having to decide who's worse, Rek-Rap or Repo, because at least Rek-Rap has a little bit of personality or charisma. Repo is a dud. And I mean, I'm saying villains don't have to be likable. He's a dud and actually gets taken down in a way that kind of ridiculous. But this is written by Zeb Wells, pencils by Ed McGuinness. You have Mark Farmer, Wade Van Grauberger, and Ed McGuinness on inks, colors by Marcelo Menez, and the letter of VC's Joe Caramagna. You do end up having Eric Arcienega on the Gang War chapter colors. You have Emilio Laiso on the Gang War chapter artist. There's a bunch of people involved in this. Obviously, the big play is to get to Gang War. It's coming, just like Santa Claus. And they even say in this is the last issue. It's like, this is it. Gang War's coming next. Hey, everybody, we got to kind of tie up this Rek-Rap stuff, which they do. I don't know that you could end up, getting it in a satisfactory way to end it because most people don't like it. So they just want it to end. So actually, by the end, I was actually kind of, all right, I'm a little positive because it's done. Yeah. And you do set up a thing at the end for Gang War that might be intriguing, at least in the issue itself. Rek-Rap tells us that the Gang War stuff is a little more serious. I'm going to take him on his word here because I hope it is, and it does seem like it may be.
Slightly more.
You still get Silvermane, and you still obviously... Poor Silverman, that guy can't catch a break. The guy is gone, then he comes back, he's got his mechanical body again, gets ripped apart here. I'm like, oh my goodness gracious. But the big play here is who is Repo? If you listen to us each week and listen to the last time we talked about Amazing Spider-Man, we're dummies, and we knew that it was the guy who was hanging on the stoop trying to get the money back or whatever. I mean, I don't even know what was money now because you never really do find out that much about him and what he was doing at that point, because even then it felt a little more than just, I need $200,000. Oh my God, your hospital bills. It did seem like it was setting up something a little more supernatural, a little more something weird. By the end of this, it just looks like it's done. Now, we might get Rek-Rap again. I don't know they're going to get Repo again.
Probably not.
Peter's trying to figure out what's going on. You get a little bit of an intro. Hey, everybody, I ended up getting swallowed by this guy, and now he's spitting me out in Limbo. Down in Limbo, you end up... Remember, this is supposedly going to be the Limbo of Limbo, which, again, makes me shake my head. Rek-Rap's down telling Rek-Rap Storytime Adventures, and it was annoying last issue. At least here where Zeb Wells is playing this, he wants to kind of play that little meta thing of it is annoying, and it's annoying the Insidious Six, including Octoball, and them, they're falling asleep. They're getting annoyed because in the way, which didn't click with me right away, Rek-Rap explains to Peter that while you're down in this limbo of limbo, time moves slower than it does up on the regular, planet Earth, the regular real-time deal. And that only is something that allows you to try to have tension, but not, and also have Rek-Rap and Peter can have some adventures in Limbo that mean nothing and I really don't care about. But while that's happening, Repo, he's getting out razor blades and meat cleavers, and he's overstepped the idea of what I thought Repo was. And he's kind of remembering his regular life only because, again, I think that has to tie him. Why would he be concerned with Peter? He was told not to veer off, just go get Rek-Rap and Insidious Six. All that because in the background, Madeline Pryor thinks that this is going to ruin their deal with the embassy. I mean, all these things, if you could line up things that I don't really care about, like the Limbo
Top
embassy, this, Repo, like they're all there.
Yeah.
Like they're all there. I'm like, I really don't care. But it allows you to have some fun, like Rek-Rap and Peter going around eating flies. One of the things is Peter And Rek-Rap, oh my God, we're fighting these things that are biting us. And in the meantime, Rek-Rap like, oh my God, it's a tickle fight. No, they're trying to eat us,
they're eating our face, dude.
Oh boy. And so the other thing, we thought the complete deal, Peter last issue was a complete dick. He ended up where Rek-Rap said, I've been following this repo guy, and he seems to be not on the up and up. But he kind of is, but he isn't. Again, nothing really matters. I mean, I should just keep hitting it doesn't really matter. But Peter felt bad, and he should have, because he really did ditch Rek-Rap, who just wants to hang out with Peter. He just wants to have fun, all that stuff. So when you go, he's having these little adventures, but in the meantime, Randy's going to get sliced and diced. But because the time moves different, you can do all this nonsense to then have, right as Repo is going to kill Randy, you end up having Peter and Rek-Rap get spit out. They're in, I guess, in that attic, and you have the deal where Peter goes to save Randy, then recognizes and says, oh my God, and I think this is supposed to be this wow moment of a twist. Oh my God, Repo's that guy that was hanging out on the stoop that whole time. I think everybody had to have known it. I mean, I say that, and we talk, people may not have, whatever.
Yeah, but look, again, looking at the mask, like, there's not one, but other than the hat, he wears a stupid hat. In this particular instance, he's not wearing the hat, and he has not one feature that looks like the other guy.
It just seemed like because he just kept collecting things, like, oh, it must be that.
Maybe it's his personality, I guess.
Yeah. So he's like, oh my God, that's the guy, that the collections agent. He was trying to get things after I was in the hospital with the UFOs. Something that was a huge linchpin of this series that never amounted to anything.
I forgot about that.
What you're doing here is showing that something that was so big, the idea of where's the repercussions of him blowing up York, Pennsylvania? I mean, I'm still waiting for that big ticker tape parade where they congratulate him from wiping off what is a cesspool off the face of the earth.
You could see the pillow of smoke from your house, the cloud of smoke from your house, couldn't you?
I'm looking there. I'm like, oh, thank God. It's like the nuclear explosion mixed with meth labs all going up at once. That's all it is. Like, oh man, maybe they can get Redding next, right? It'll just go down the line. Please go to Chester, do all of it. So you end up all this going down. Like, this was the big thing of the series that now you see as a joke and didn't mean anything. The collections deal. What's up with Aunt May? Remember at points Aunt May didn't like Peter, and then Peter was doing this. Everybody hated Peter. Just kind of got all wiped away. It's one of those things where it drives me nuts. It's because of the time between, they just kind of like, nobody remembers that or nobody cares.
You can't do that with a character like Spider-Man. It has to be tight continuity. Things need to connect together.
And things just end up where, in this point, this is not, it's not a satisfying way to tie in and then tie up the idea of this collection agent, because we still don't know exactly, because then Peter's like, oh, what do you want me to write you a check? Oh, no, I don't collect money. But yeah, maybe not now because you're part of Madeline Pryor's Limbo deal. But what were you doing before? And that's where it gets all deal. And in that, a lot of people were actually, the one good thing that happened in Dark Web was this jerk-off ended up getting killed. Well, you see that even then where he's like, I kind of remember, I don't think I have a soul now, I'm doing this, but it's no longer intriguing because it's being wrapped up and it just ends up where it's kind of annoying. Again, it's like all of a sudden out of nowhere, somebody from York, PA is going to be like, oh man, we gave you the band live and now you did that to us. That's all I can go for York. That's like their biggest thing.
I know.
So you have this craziness, right? And what do you do then? I mean, and you a big fan of Live? I do. I like Live.
Yeah.
Really odd name that you think is kind of neat.
It's impossible to look them up on the internet.
Yeah, that's the problem. You realize once the internet really hits big and all that, it's nearly impossible to find Live. Go find a live concert of Live. Then you're really having some problems.
Their first two albums are gems, I say.
Yeah.
Gems.
Was it Throwing Copper? Was that their one?
That was their second album.
That album might be one of the best albums of, the 90s in my mind. It was so good. It was a weird play because it was kind of like an REM meets like a little bit of like, not grunge, but we could go into a whole discussion of Live instead. But yeah, so when this goes on, they end up where Rek-Rap comes and shoves a couch down what is the belly.
How does he do that, by the way? He attaches two different web lines to it. How could you do?
The only funny play in this was at one point where they get into the room and Rek-Rap says, oh my God, we're going to attack this repo. We need a funny quip. What is the funny quip? Peter sees Randy, goes, Randy! And then Rek-Rap's like, oh, classic. And then when he ends up shoving the couch into Repo, he yells, Randy. That's kind of funny. I got to chuckle. But other than that, we're just tying up loose ends. So why not just tie up loose ends by making almost like an anglerfish move where you end up, like you said, you get a webbing into the kind of pseudo head type deal of Repo.
And then he webs the table. Somehow he connects it and throws it in there.
And throws it in so that the head goes in. Kind of reminds me of when you get sort of that look of somebody with their head up their own A. Like it almost felt like that to me, but he eats himself, which then crosses the streams, which then ends up sending him that, whatever. It just ends.
He just collapses in on himself. Like I guess that's what happens when you swallow your tongue, maybe. You
and
just collapse
here's the weird play. When you do this, though, because what it seems like it'd be like almost like a perpetual deal because they're in limbo. Well, actually, they're not in limbo at that point.
They're in that attic.
They're in the attic. What goes on, if he eats something, it sends it to limbo, but he's also his body sending himself. So I think it like kind of like just blows up.
Yeah, I think the whole world shuts down, though.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It kind of that whole
creates a paradox that shuts everything down.
I'm telling you, it's like crossing the streams in a really lame way. And then you just get to make it so that you know, like, oh, this story meant nothing. You just go back to Madeline Pryor saying, congratulations, Rek-Rap, you're pretty cool. And then everybody, including the Insidious Six, all end up, or Insidious Six, they all cheer. They have an exploding parade.
A parade, yeah.
And then Rek-Rap says, all right, well, stay tuned. After this episode of Rek-Rap Storytime Adventure, we're now going to move off to the gang war prelude, which is a little more somber tone than this. I'm like, I don't need meta fourth wall break. Please, just stop. You end up the Rek-Rap stuff. I think most people be happy at just that. It's over. It meant nothing. This is what seems to happen a lot with Zeb Wells in this run. You said earlier you have to have a tight continuity and things like that. But to me, we're getting a lot of stories, even, the stuff where, oh my God, Kamala Khan, she died. Boom. Next issue, we're having jokes. Then we end up having a darker story. Oh, Peter gets the sins of Norman. We end up, boom, 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 done. Oh, what are the repercussions? Oh, Rek-Rap. And then everything moves on in a way that the other stuff is shown to not really matter.
Because he likes to develop that stuff in the background, like without actually showing.
Yeah, and he always wants to. I swear, if people want to know what I think this Rek-Rap is, I think that Nick Lowe and the other people involved, and I don't think that he's doing a good job as the full group editor anyway, but I think they ended up saying, listen, we have gang war coming up. You are a chucklehead. All you do is want to have your stupid... We're going to get it out of your system. You can use Rek-Rap. We're going to get Ed McGuinness in here. He's going to kick butt on the art. You're going to tell these stories. Get all of your stupid jokes out of your system because we need this gang war to be a little more serious. We can't have this nonsense. So do it now or don't do it at all. He's like, hey, I'll goof off. All right. And then he does it. Because when you get to the next part, it actually is a little
And
more.
You're not allowed to call Cody Ziegler anymore and see what he's doing.
Yeah, well, the problem is that's who's doing the gang war stuff with him. So I think that in the play, they're like, listen, we're going to let you do this. We're telling Cody right now that you are actually taking it. That's his fun, too. He's done. Again, people seem to like the Miles book. I'm not reading it. I kind of feel like I should be once. I mean, we're gonna cover the stuff for gang war. I'm hoping that it's easier to jump in. Even if I haven't been reading it, but if I have to, I will go back. But he drives me nuts. And these two together, sentient sandwiches, freaking mailboxes that are talking. I mean, Christmas trees that are alive and smoking cigars. I don't need that.
They probably said, listen, connect with Ziegler on the gang war stuff. They start talking, but then they never get to it, and they just talk about, let's do this instead.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm telling you, Nicolo's going by and he hears the giggling going on. And
there's no work getting done. That's serious.
Like, what are you guys doing? Like, oh, man, we got this idea. This Rek-Rap, he's going to come back. They're like, no, get that done now. That's not gang war. It's really, or else we're going to have a gang war right here. So we'll see. Because once you get to the part that sets up the gang war, it's actually not bad. It's a little weird, but I like it. The weird thing I'm saying is we have Janice Lincoln, the Tombstone's daughter, who's there next to what I believe is not Tombstone. Like the funny play would be that she's gone and she's talking all this stuff. And it's not to Tomb because it does not look like it is, but it doesn't look like him at all. But he's all withered. But the big play here is Hammerhead is going through like we saw before, and he's just going through and he's playing everybody against each other. And it works out pretty well. I actually thought it was kind of funny the way, and again, it has a sense of humor to it, but it's not a gag. It's not a joke. This is stuff that mobsters and people, this is what they do. You say that one person's talking about the other, then you go to that other person and say, oh, by the way, this is happening. You get, a bunch of characters here to set up the whole gang war. And it's pretty cool.
It's basically like Penguin in the Batman would do this.
Yeah. I'm telling you, it's almost, and I've been rewatching Sopranos. I could see this stuff happens all the time.
Absolutely.
I mean, Tony calls New York. They say that, but then Johnny Sacks is doing that. Like, this is how it goes. So
he's committing murders and framing people and doing all sorts of stuff.
It's pretty funny. And you did this and it's funny because what also you get out of this is when Hammerhead's doing this, everybody thinks Hammerhead's their friend.
Yep.
Like they go with, and that's the big play. He's playing them all against each other, but in the long run, he seems to be the one that's open to listen to everybody. They all think that. Now, if they get together and start saying, well, Hammerhead said this, whatever, that could be trouble. But then you go and you end up seeing Silvermane and Count Nefario, which we already know are kind of running things. And they actually say, yeah, you know what? Hammerhead, he's doing the job of our peon. He's not really that important. We really don't care about him, but he's doing a good job. Silvermane seems to be like, man, he's a pretty good, guy doing this. Oh, he doesn't mean Count Nefario. He's like, he doesn't mean crap. But then at the end, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it's crazy where Silvermane starts to fritz out. He's got his, robot body. He grabs Nefario by the neck. I'm like, holy crap, but he keeps yelling, I'm not doing this. That's crazy. Then he rips his own head off. And then at the end, you have a mysterious figure that you can't see, but he seems to recognize him. And it's somebody who thinks this gang war sounds like a lot of fun. Me and you both think it might be Norman, especially because that's a big play with the original gang war.
Yeah, I'm going with that.
It's funny when you first see it, I'm like, why is Matt Murdock so out of it really looks like Daredevil, the way that the light's shining into me and whatnot, but I don't think that's it. I think it's Goblin. But I looked up to see who was involved with Silvermane specifically in the last gang war. One of the characters was Rapier, tried to kill him. Like, I don't think it's him. Then the other play here that I thought would be kind of crazy. I don't know how the power and what's going on here, but to be Madame Mask, who's now pissed off that her dad and all this stuff, but I don't think it's that either. I think it might be Norman, and we'll see how it goes. But by the end, with that, it's kind of like, okay, I want to get to gang war. This seems like at least now it still has a bit of humor kind of deal, but more humor of us seeing crazy stuff happen, not Rek-Rap humor. So I'm looking forward to it. By the end of this, I'm like, all right, we'll see. And people will probably pish-posh it and say, oh my God, I'll never read anything by Zeb Wells where it's the Spider-Man book coming out. We're going to be talking about it. So I do get at least a little excited when it seems like something is going to be there that we might enjoy. So I'm all for gang war. This issue, not much, but what did you think?
I agree with you. I think I'm happy to see these loose ends tied up a bit. I think he was probably developing Norman in the background where we should have tackled some of that stuff, but I think we'll be hit with that in gang war. So I'd probably give this just because they tied up some stuff a 7.5.
Yeah, I think I'll go 7. And here's the thing. The repo thing, I think, it really makes it obvious. I think that's the thing. The obvious thing at the end to me and you is that it's Norman. A lot of times we'll say, though, well, it's too obvious. I don't think there's too obvious for Zeb Wells. The idea that he thinks that nobody figured out that Repo was that Repo guy from before. I mean, he really seems to think he's more clever than he is. The idea that Norman ended up, the last we saw, he's kind of giggling. He ended up giggling and, the since then the other play, he was completely off when he was yelling about Rek-Rap being at Oscorp. That didn't seem like him. And now we get this mysterious figure that Silvermane recognizes. The big play would be Norman. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, it could be anything. I think that's what it is.
You are all weirdos.
Weird science is the revolution. Weird science is the revolution.